This lesson is going to be over reasoning. This is from Chapter 2, Section 1 and 4. We're going to look at two main types of reasoning so that we can begin our process into proofs. Remember, if you need to stop this at any time, please feel free to do so. All right, inductive reasoning. This is the process of observing data, recognizing patterns, and making generalizations about those patterns. You are using assumptions to say something is true, meaning it's not facts. It's maybe just a pattern that you've noticed that happens again and again, so you assume something is true. For instance, say that you notice Miss Center gets to school at 7 o'clock on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, so you assume she'll be at school at 7 o'clock on Thursday. But that's only using inductive reasoning. It's not a fact, you're just following a pattern that you've seen. We use a conjecture as a statement believed to be true based on inductive reasoning. So this conjecture is what you prove. So let's try this out. Let's think about this. The product of an even number and an odd number is always what? Well, let's look at some patterns here. Okay, we have 2 times 3. Well, we hopefully know 2 times 3 gives us 6. 2 times 5, even and odd, gives us 10. 4 times 3, 12. 4 times 5, 20. So, what would you conclude? That the product of an even number and an odd number is always even. So this is using patterns to finish and to prove this inductive reasoning. Okay, let's use some inductive reasoning to finish these patterns here. We need to draw the next set. Well, looking at that first square, what do you maybe notice? What happens between the first to the second square? Well, it looks like it's split in half. Okay, then from the second to the third, the top part is split in half. Then from the third to the fourth, we have that the left top part is split. So maybe a valid conclusion would be our next shape would be a square. We have it split and split and split. Well, to me, it would only make sense to cut that top part in half. So there's your next figure. Okay. Then we have over here, we just have an octagon. We've connected one diagonal. Then we connect another diagonal, a third diagonal. So, to save myself some drawing time, our next shape would be, or our next step in the pattern would be to add in that pink diagonal. After the pink would come the green diagonal following that pattern. Okay, that's using inductive reasoning. We are just following a pattern that we see. Deductive reasoning is a process of using logic to draw conclusions from given facts, definitions, and properties. Okay, this is true because you have facts to back it up. So we're not just going to assume something, we're going to know that it's true because we know that's a fact. We have two types. We will talk about the law of detachment and the law of syllogism. The law of detachment says that if our conditional is true, remember that if P then Q, there's our conditional we talked about. If that is true and P is true, well, Q has to be true then. Law of syllogism is a little bit trickier. It's a type of valid reasoning that uses that if P then Q is true and if Q then R is true, we can conclude if P then R is also true. Kind of a way to look at this is if we put these all by each other. So we were saying that if we have P then Q, and we have Q then R. Notice these inside two things match, so it's kind of like they can disappear. We then know that P then R is true. So that's how you can look at the law of syllogism. Okay, so here's two examples that we can go off of. If two segments are congruent, then they have the same length. Well, we know that. We spent first unit talking all about being congruent. So if they're congruent, they have the same length. Well, we know that AB is congruent to XY. So guess what? We can conclude that AB is equal to XY because we know that it's true that we have two congruent segments. So therefore, they're going to be equal. All right, let's try out our next one. If the measure of angle A is less than 90 degrees, then the measure of angle A is acute. If the measure of angle A is acute, then it is not a right angle. So we know then, by law of syllogism, that if a measure of angle A is less than 90 degrees, then it is not a right angle. And also take a look. We have right here, if the measure of angle A is acute, the measure of angle A is acute. So those two things match. Because those two things match, we can then take those first two parts, or the first part, excuse me, and the last part, and we can put them together. That's how the law of syllogism works. All right, so there is our basic reasoning. We will spend some time in class looking that over a little bit more. But remember, make sure you have that vocabulary down because that's going to really help us out.